Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited to film this video because this is my everything that I read in 2025 video. And if you guys been keeping up with like the recent vlogs, you know that I have been in one of the worst reading slumps ever, and I haven't finished a book in the last 4 months, and I honestly just haven't been reading in general. I haven't had like the motivation, the interest to, and it's honestly low-key kind of sad because I was looking at my reading tracker because I write down all the books that I read just so I can know what to say when my yearly wrap-up comes up. And I was like, I had such a good reading year from January all the way to August. Like I was reading minimum 4 books a month, which is like 1 book a week. September came and I was just like out the window. Haven't read a book since. Well, I have like tried. I probably read like 1 or 2 chapters of books, but nothing has really kept my interest where I like finished it or wanted to continue a book. So it's been quite a journey these past few months, but I have hope that this reading slump is coming to an end. Majority of the books I read this year, actually all of the books I read this year were on audiobook, excluding 2. I read 2 physical books, but the rest have been on audiobooks, and I am such like a ride or die girl for audiobooks. No one can tell me anything about them. I love them so much. I think they're so entertaining. They're so great. They really bring the story to life. Like if you have the right narrators, the story just feels so much more lived in. Like I love a good audiobook. A lot of these books that I'm going to talk about, I'm probably going to appear on screen, but if I have the physical copy, I will hold it up. The first book we read this year is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I was on an Ali Hazelwood kick this year. I really just love her. I think she's great, and I heard amazing things about this book, which is why I wanted to read it. However, I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I think it fell a little bit short for me. I just wasn't fully invested in their love story, even though there were some funny parts, and I really liked the introduction of how like the 2 characters met. I think it was Jack and someone else. I'm also really bad with character names, so I usually just say like female main character, male main character, or character descriptors, but I am so bad with names. I really love the start of the story, especially with the prologue where we got a foreshadowing of what was going to happen with them and how they had to do this little fake dating situation. But like throughout the story, I just wasn't feeling their chemistry. Then we have The Seed Down the Block by Amy Ward. I fell into like an Amy Ward spiral this year. I read like basically all of her discography until we get to a certain book that just made me DNF that book and then DNF the whole series. And literally I just can't stop thinking about it. So once we get to this book, I will say it. For the month of January, I did listen to The Seed Down the Block and it was fun. I gave it a 4 stars. It's really unserious. Like it's super lighthearted, fluffy, just like pure romance. It was very much like the female main character focused on like what she was going through, and then the male main character was there to worship her and just like be a part of her existence. Like he's just a side character basically, and it's a football romance, and so the whole entire series is just basically like characters from the football team and like their love interests. There were some cringy moments, but overall just like a really light, turn off your brain, don't think too hard kind of book. And we have The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I felt like this was kind of viral at the beginning of the year. It had its moment and I wanted to jump on the hype, so I gave it a listen and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I thought it was just so mid. Like there really isn't anything exciting about it. I also just could not buy the characters' chemistry. I'm like, do you guys even like each other? I'm just not feeling anything from these characters. Not really a lot of personality. I felt like I was just reading kind of a no plot, no drama, just vibes. It was just like a small town and how they operate day to day. Then I listened to My December Darling. This was my first 5 stars of the year, and this is a short story by Lauren Asher. It was a really quick listen to, and it was sort of like a holiday romance, but I think listening to it in January, it didn't make me feel like I was trying to live in December. Like Christmas was such a small part of the story. I still loved it. Every single time Lauren Asher writes a man, like he is just gonna do it. Like she just knows how to write good men. And this story in particular is kind of like a hate to love situation. I wouldn't say like enemies because they're not truly out to get each other, but there is like a dislike in the beginning. But I just thought this story was like really romantic and sweet, and it's like the little details that the male main character is asking like other characters about just to learn more about her. Good romance, and he's just so sweet and so romantic, and he just wants to know more about her. Next, I read Butcher and Blackbird. This is my first physical read of the year, and I was obsessed. Like this is a 5 star. I think this is definitely ending up in my top 5 of the year, and it might be in my top 10 of like all times because I am just so obsessed with this book. I talk about it so often, and especially if you watch my videos during this time, like in January of earlier this year, I was raving about this book book in literally every single video. This is a dark romance, but it's like dark rom-com, because I usually am not like a dark romance fan, but the comedic aspect in this is so good that it's the perfect balance of like dark romance and then comedy, because it's about two serial killers who basically play this game together, and every single year they are given like one other serial killer to kill. And whoever gets to them first wins, and it's best 3 out of 5. Check your trigger warnings. The author added it in the very beginning of this book, but I'm sure you can find them online as well. I love the ending. I think there's so many twists and turns, and the ending just like punched me in the gut because it was just so emotional. 5 stars. I love this book. Moving on to February, I was so obsessed with Butcher and Blackbird that I started Larkin Leather, and this is the second book in the Ruinous Love series. I listened to this one on audiobook. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I personally just couldn't understand why these two characters were together. It was a marriage of convenience, but I just genuinely didn't get the convenience. I'm like, who is this conveniencing? What is the point of this marriage? They're literally keeping it from everyone. Like, so this is about Rowan and Sloan. So this is about Sloan and Rowan, and then the second book is about Rowan's older brother and Sloan's best friend. And I just feel like there were so many secrets between Sloan and her best friend that I'm just like, that's not fair, because Sloan opens up to her best friend a lot. Like, she loves her best friend, she shares so many secrets. Her best friend knows that she's a serial killer, but like in the second book, Sloan doesn't know that her best friend's a serial killer, and the reason Sloan became a serial killer was to get revenge for her best friend. So I just feel like there were a lot of secrets, and I just couldn't understand why they were together. It just kind of fell flat from the second book, especially because I was so obsessed with the first book, and reading this right after, I was like, what? Second book of February, continuing on with the Amy Ward series, we have The Wiener Across the Way. Once again, 3 stars, very light, very fluffy. I did not think about this book too hard, but I remember when I was reading it, like, you can tell it was heavily influenced by Taylor Swift and Travis. She probably wrote it within like a few months, because beginning of the year, I feel like Taylor and Travis were like just starting to date, like the rumors were happening. And I mean, the summer, when did the Eras tour end? The author is just quick on it. Like, how do we already have pop star and football romance that is so similar to Taylor and Travis's love story? Of course, like, pop star and football romances exist before, but this one is like, you can tell because it talked about like the pop star like trying to own back her masters and just like having a manager that wasn't looking out for her, and the betrayal of like her management team in like the music industry. It was just like a lot of coincidences that overlapped within their love story. Anyways, moving on, I listened to the first Caller on audiobook, but I was so obsessed with it that I had to own a physical copy, so I got one. I love it so much. I think the cover is adorable. I think it's so freaking cute, but I love this book so much. Like, Aiden Valentine, The Man That You Are. This was such like a romantic and sweet, charming book. Like, it's such a classic romance. Like, it did everything right. All the characters have like enough personality. No one is outshining each other. There's just like enough romance, enough plot, enough spice, and like the balance of all 3, it was just so perfect. And I love this book so much. I love the jealousy scenes in this. Like, Aiden was so good. He is such a good character, and Lucy is so interesting and relatable, and I think they make such a good dynamic. And I love the concept of this book. It's about a love radio show host and a single mom whose daughter calls in and was like, my mom needs to go on a date, and he's like, am I talking to a child right now? Basically, the clip goes viral, and her mom gets invited into the show, and she talks about like her dating life, and Aiden is the host, and he's just trying to set her on a bunch of dates until she can find true love. And of course, after spending so much time together, maybe her true love is sitting right in front of her. Then next up, another 5-star read. We're doing 5 stars back to back right now. I read Lights Out by Navessa Allen, and I listened to this on audiobook, and it was so but so freaking good. I thought about this book for like weeks after finishing it, that I had to buy a physical copy, and I wanted to reread it physically, but I only got like to this much before I put in a bookmark and never picked it up again for some reason. It is about a trauma nurse named Allie and a cyber hacker, like he works in cybersecurity, but he's also like morally gray. Like you're kind of questioning if what he's doing is ethical. And his name is Josh. And basically it's about how they get together. And their connecting line is that Josh's roommate named Tyler used to hook up with Allie. Like they were a very short term fling. But she has been on his mind ever since, and he stalked her. So she calls up Tyler and she's like, hey, that roommate of yours, does he still do like hacking or whatever? I need him to hack something because I feel like I'm being stalked. But little does she know, like, her stalker is him. Very, very good. I loved it. 5 stars. I will probably, now that I'm thinking about it, I want to read it again. Next up, since we have 2 5 stars back to back, we have 2 DNFs back to back. But the first book is The Pickleballers. This is about, I literally don't know, pickleballs. Supposed to be a romance, but I remember listening to it and just feeling so confused and so many characters introduced to me at once, but also like literally I didn't know anything that was happening. It was just so boring. Like I just wasn't invested, so I DNF'd it. And then the next one is The Pea Next Door by Amy Ward, and this is the book that made me DNF this book and this series. And I wrote one line in my notes here. I wrote, if you heard the fake Vietnamese in this, you would DNF too. So I listened to this on audiobook, and if you didn't know, I am Vietnamese. And the character in this book, I don't know if she personally was Vietnamese or if she was just like really obsessed with the Vietnamese culture, but basically she and one of the football players go on a date and they go to this pho restaurant, and then it's her time to order. She orders in Vietnamese. And mind you, this is like no shade towards the character. This is more shades towards, actually no shade towards anyone. Like it is what it is. If like the character was Vietnamese, I feel like there was no effort. Like you could find a Vietnamese narrator. I've read from Vietnamese narrators. The accents were off, the dialogue, it just ruined the whole thing. Like the character, see, I don't know what to say. Is it the character? Is it the narrator? Because the narrator is the one bringing the characters to life. There was Vietnamese during this audiobook and it just did not sound right. The mispronunciation, it just threw me off. But also I think this is part of the writing, the way the character ordered her pho. It's part of like the loss in translation, like the way the narrator said it was wrong, but the way it was written was not correct. Like that's not how you order at a pho restaurant. You're a little bit more casual, and she was just very like formal. And to me that gives Google Translate. Like the author typed in, can I get a bowl of pho with this? And then Google Translate it, copied it, and then put it in her book. It, like, I don't know. A lot about this book just didn't sit right with me, so I DNF'd it. And I was at work when I was listening to this audiobook, and the moment I heard the Vietnamese, I was like, moving on. The next book I read was What Happens After Midnight. This is by K.L. Walter. I always love K.L. Walter. I think she writes like one of the best young adults. I just love her writing style. I love that she's a big Swiftie, and I feel like she like kind of intertwines it in all of her books, and it's kind of like if you're a Swiftie you also know, and you get like the song lyrics or like the little inside jokes. This one also had a bit of Schitt's Creek references in it, so I really enjoyed that. Listen to this, gave it 3 stars. It was super cute, fun, and adventurous. My camera stopped recording, and I think because I hit the time limit, but back on my game. I gave this 3 stars. It was very cute, it's fun and adventurous and like very fast paced. It's young love, it was adorable, but I wasn't fully invested because I was a bit distracted when I was listening to this audiobook. I was trying to get 1, Blackpink tickets, and 2, Tate McRae tickets. And I only survived 1 of them. Moving on to the month of March, we have another physical read. This is my 2nd physical book of the year, and it's Out the Wood by Hannah Bonham Young, who I also met this year in September. I went to her author event featuring Brynn Weaver, who wrote Butcher and Blackbird. So literally 2 of my favorite authors in one night, and I was obsessed. Like it was such a good time. I love this story so much. I didn't think I would because it is like a second chance romance, like marriage in disaster, trying to fix up a marriage situation. And usually for me, like when my book characters get married, like they're set for life. Like their end game, they're living life together, growing old together, and all of my book characters are immortal, so they just live on forever in love. And so I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this, because I really did like Caleb and Sarah in the first book, which is out on a limb, and they were side characters in that book, so this is their main book, and I really loved them. I was like, oh, they're so cute, they're so sweet, just a happy married couple, no kids, just living their life. And so to read this book, I was like, they're having marriage troubles. Loving this so much. I think it was so emotional and so like complex. There was so much explanation of like the childhood that they had and experienced together and how that impacted their adulthood and how that impacted their marriage. It talks a lot about grief and how like that is a forever thing that lives inside of you. It's not like, oh, one day you're healed from grief, like you're always going to experience it. Like grief kind of lives inside of you forever, and I feel like this was such a good like explanation of it. It's really good. I love like the dynamic. I usually hate dual timelines, but for this book I really liked it. Then I listened to The Stand-In by Lily Chu. This was for book club. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I forgot. I literally brought in a poppy so I could have it for this video, and I was like, why do I feel like I sound nasally? It's because I haven't drank any water. Overall, I gave this book a 3 stars. I thought it was fun. It was easy to listen to. There were some twists and turns that I personally didn't expect, but I think there are some parts of the story that were a little bit too slow for me, where I was like, nothing is really happening right now. And it is considered a romance, but I personally feel like it's more women's fiction or just like literary fiction, because it was so much more on the female main character and her character development than it was about romance. Then I listened to Temple of Swoon. I had really high expectations for this because I loved the first book in this series. It was a 5 stars. I was obsessed with it. I didn't think I would find interest in a book about archaeologists and like rocks and digging, but the first book just blew me out the water. It was so good. And so I was like, oh, the second book is out. It's going to be a good time. And it just felt a little bit flat for me. It was fun and fast paced, but I genuinely like felt no surprise because it was too similar to the first book. I felt like it took the first book and just changed the character names, and I just like didn't feel anything different, because I feel like when you're in a series, a lot that overlaps because it's in the same universe, but also I feel like I would want something a little bit more fresh, and the second book was just giving like the first book. Nothing new. I was a little disappointed, but I still love the first book. Then lastly, for the month of March, I read Not in My Book by Katie Holt, which I started reading physically and then I jumped to the audiobook version after maybe like 2 chapters. It was cute, it was fun, but it was very predictable. It was giving like Wattpad, like the cliche tropes, the kind of cringy moments, and the way the main character, especially the female character, talked and act, it was giving like Wattpad 2012. It was a bit annoying at times where she's like, me? Like, I'm mysterious me spilling coffee on you? Like, it was giving Wattpad, and it's fine, and it was on audiobook, so it was like more tolerable, but it was just very cliche and predictable. Then for the month of April, I read 3 books, so we're slowing down a little bit. The first book I read was The Next Best Fling, and this was another book club pick between me and my friends. This is one that I picked. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. Fun and easy to read, but I wish we had 2 POVs from the female main character and the male main character, but we only got the female main character because I feel like it would add so much more dimension into the story and really seeing like everyone's perspective, because I feel like we were in Marcella's head too much, the female main character. Like I felt like I knew her too much, where I was like, girl, I feel like I'm digging in your brain, and it would be nice to get an outside perspective because I don't think you're right in this situation. But this is my first time reading a love square situation. It's not a love triangle, it's a square. It kind of threw me off, especially with the dynamics. It's like your ex-best friend, your older brother, like there's I don't even like a love triangle, so I couldn't even deal with a love square. Then next up, I read Spiral. I won this book on Instagram as part of a giveaway from the author, and it's genuinely the best thing ever because it's signed, and I loved Collide so much. That book featured Aiden and Summer, and this one featured Elise and Sage, and I have the physical copy, but I listened to this on audiobook, and I gave it a 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. I thought it was fun and cute, but I felt like the characters lacked something, because I feel like they were way different in the very beginning. Like they didn't share the same sense of humor, the same personality. Like I couldn't understand why they were together. Like the chemistry wasn't there for me, but in the end they did work out, and I was like, okay, I kind of see it. Like they are very like communicative with each other, and they are really sweet, and they understand each other really well. I was like, okay, I see it. But in the beginning I couldn't be bought to believe their love. Then next up, I listened to Before I Let Go. This has been on my TBR for the longest time, and I'm so glad I picked it up. It was so emotional, but so freaking good. This is also another second chance. They have kids together, they were together, then they separated, and it's a very interesting dynamic and it's really complex. But overall, I'm just so obsessed with this story and I love it so much. 5 stars. And like when I was listening to this audiobook, I was like genuinely on the edge of my seat, like, will they get together? Because I genuinely didn't know how Kennedy Ryan was going to end their story because it felt really realistic. I feel like I know these characters really well, and so I wasn't in kind of like my usual typical reading mentality where I'm like, of course they're gonna end up together. It's a book, like it's a fictional world. The author can do whatever they want, and of course it's romance. They're going to end up together, no doubt about it. But I think I was like not in that fictional mentality and I was still in reality. I was like, wait, are they gonna end up together? Like, is this going to break my heart even more? I just love the way they cared for each other. They are just so magnetic and they like genuinely want the best for each other. So wait, okay, I don't think I said it, but I read this book in May. So the second book I read in May was also another 5 stars. We're going back to back again. This is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. I read this series when I was a senior in college, so a couple years ago. I don't think a couple is right, a few years ago. But I read this at the end of my senior year. I read the first book and then I read the second book. And then I just stopped. Like, I never picked up the third book. And I'm genuinely questioning why, because I remember being so invested in the first 2 books. Like, I would stay up to read it, and then I would close the book. And my roommate at the time was like, did you not like it? And I was like, no, it got too scary. I think I'm gonna read it in daylight tomorrow morning. And I think the reason I didn't pick it up, or it took me so long to pick up, is because I was spoiled for the ending. And I was just like, I don't want to read about that. But it ended fine. It was a great story. It was super intriguing. Like, it keeps you on your toes. And honestly, Pip is so unhinged in this book. She is wild to me because in the first 2 books she's like trying to solve murder cases. Wild. She's so unhinged and I love it about her. And the whole time reading it I was just like, where are her parents? Like, girl, do something. I don't know. I loved how the whole series ended up like tied together with a bow. I just loved like the way everything came to an end. Like, it was beautiful. Next, we have 2 books from the Mine F series. This is by St. Abbey. I listened to Sidetrack and Scarlet Angel. I remember in the past I read the first or second book on my Kindle and I realized they came out with audiobooks. So I was like, okay, I'm going to continue the series on audiobook. Both of these stories are 3 stars. I loved jumping back into the series, and on audiobook specifically, it was multi POV, so we get to hear from different narrators, and I just really like that perspective a lot. Especially because it's such like a fast-paced, thrilling read. Like, it's about trying to find a serial killer, but the female main character is a serial killer, but she's also in love with this cop. So it's very intense, fast-paced, a lot of stakes going on. And I wrote down in my notes, I don't know how Lana is doing all of this and getting away with it, but how is Logan so clueless? I knew I had this book because I remember like seeing a physical copy of it in my collection, and I was like, why can't I find it? But I found it. The last book of May is Beg, Borrow, and Steal by Sarah Adams. I really love Sarah Adams. She writes a lot of like fun romances. I think she used to write a lot of like clean closed door romances, but she started like having more explicit scenes in her books, which I personally am a fan of, but I have seen some comments where people aren't a fan of, so. But I gave this a 4 stars. I thought it was like really cute, fast paced, they're neighbors, they're 2nd grade teachers, there's that like enemies to lovers situation, but they also want to be writers. It was a lot of drama, but it was also like very cliche and just like a typical, very sweet romantic book. And it was a really fun listen on audiobook, so I really like this one. Okay, then next up we have The Favorite, which I feel like everyone was obsessed with this year. And I remember it came out like earlier in the year and I didn't pick it up, but I kept on seeing like reviews after reviews of it being 5 stars. And then one of my friends, someone, I forgot who, but someone was like, oh, I'm currently reading this, or I finished it and it was really good. And I was like, okay, I think it's my turn to read it. So freaking good. 5 stars. It's about figure skaters, and it was so good. It's about figure skater and being in this like competitive world of figure skating and trying to qualify for the finals, but just like a lot of drama from start to finish. Every single chapter I was like, oh, I couldn't believe what was happening in front of me. Like every single one was a twist and turn. It was so dramatic and so much like secrecy, betrayals, romance, and just everything mixed up in one. And in the end, I was feeling some type of way because I just wasn't 100% happy with the way it ended, but it matched the book really well. I was like, okay, like after all that betrayal, like I could see why the book is ending this way, but I wasn't satisfied with it because I was like, no, in my head, romances should be like, all endings of books should be like happily ever after. But it was a good ending. Like it was like half of a happily ever after, but there was just like a little part of it where I was like, I'm not satisfied with this part. The last book of June, I listened to The Roommate, and I picked this up at a romance book swap, which is really cool. I heard a lot about it like a long time ago, so I was like, oh, I'll pick it up. It sounds very intriguing. I thought it was going to be so light and fluffy, but it ended up being a bit more like, there was a lot more structure to the plot. Like there was actually more drama and more character development than I had thought, because the way I was introduced to this book was that it's about an adult actor and like a random roommate, and basically she is very much like academic driven, bookworm, shy and reserved, and he is in the adult film industry, and so them being matched up together was kind of like very interesting to her, and she was just very curious. So that's what I thought the book was about, and it sort of is, but there's a lot more elements to it, and it just made it so much more interesting, and it just was surprisingly so exciting and good. I feel like both of these characters were really likable. There was a good like story development. I don't know if I'm being like too mean, because I feel like I'm kind of saying like Wattpad-y in a mean way, and like that's not what I want to, because I grew up on Wattpad. I love Wattpad. I don't read from Wattpad anymore, but I love that is my reading backbone. So don't think of this as like Wattpad hate. And like I've read like Wattpad published stories as well. For the month of July, I listened to Hail by Anastasia White, which I ended up DNFing. So this is the last book that I DNF'd for the year. At first, I was like, okay, this is a little bit of a weird age gap, because I think she was like 18 and he was like 34, and he was a dad and she was like babysitting for him, or she's like being a nanny for him because he is newly single and he is a football player, I believe. So I was like, oh, the age gap is so weird, especially because the male main character's little brother is her best friend. So like that's how she got introduced into being a nanny. But it just felt like he watched her grow up. So I'm like, why would you find any kind of like interest in her? You've seen her as a baby. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. And then it got to them like getting together, and there was just smut every single scene, and I was just like, I'm not into this. There just wasn't like character or relationship development. It was just like one day they got together and now they're just doing it every chapter. I felt like I was just losing the plot of this actually supposed to being like a sports romance / sports nanny romance, and I just didn't think it had anything to do with football or her being a nanny. Like it was just them. So next book in July, I read Caught Up. This was a mixture of physically reading the book / audiobook. I think it was a good 50-50. I think the last half of the book I did audiobook, and the first half I read it physically. I loved it. This is the second book to the Ruinous Love series. Sorry guys, there was a tab in my note tracker that I just like didn't look. I read 4 physical books, and this was one of them, because I was like, I don't remember reading that much like of this book in audiobook, but no, I read this physically, which makes more sense. Like I feel like that's recalling my memory a little bit more. I really love this book because it's in the same universe as Lights Out, but it's so different. This is about Lauren, who is a sex worker. It's basically like the book's version of OF, but I don't think they can use the OF name because copyright. It's about Nico, or Junior, he goes by both names, and he is in the mafia mob. Like his dad is the mafia mob boss, and he is like his protege, and it's basically about how they kind of had this thing senior year like of high school, and then one day it was like rumored that they were together, and he just like totally denied her. I don't know this girl, like why would I touch her, why would I be near her? And she was so embarrassed, and rumors got around so bad that she had to like move schools because she was being bullied, because she was like the good girl, and everyone was just shocked that she was getting with like the mafia mob boss son. Like his groveling and like the way they got back together, reconnected as an adult, it was just so freaking good. And I just love the story and like the plot line. The cohesive storytelling in this is really amazing, especially for Lights Out and Caught Up. Like how these men are supposed to be like mean men, like he's a cyber hacker and he's morally gray, and like this guy is like the mafia mob's protege and he's supposed to like take on the mafia next. They're supposed to be like mean and aggressive, but like both of them to their core are so soft and they're so sweet to the girl. They're just so softies. Next up, I listened to Otherworldly by F.T. Lukens. This is another book club pick between me and my friends, and this was my friend's pick. I ended up giving this 2 stars. It is a young adult fantasy, and I am not a fantasy girl. I just don't get the world building. Like it's a lot to keep up with, and usually there's like a lot going on all at once, and sometimes there's even a map. And for me, reading is just like so fun and lighthearted where I don't want to use a lot of brain power, and I feel like with fantasy you have to keep up or like to remember the details. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I ended up, my camera keeps on stopping, but I think I'm hitting like the time limit, or my SD card is running low in storage, which I hope not. Anyways, I ended up giving this book a low rating because there wasn't enough fantasy. It's actually very interesting from my perspective because I just felt like it was lackluster in every single department. It was a romantasy, so I feel like there wasn't enough romance, but there also wasn't enough fantasy. So I feel like if you didn't have enough fantasy, then it would be like heavy romance plot, but it wasn't. So I just felt like I just wasn't vibing with it. It also took like way too long for me to actually be invested into the characters and the story. I think it was like 60% in when I was like, okay, I like want to learn more about them, and usually I want to feel that at like the beginning 10% so I can like finish the story. There were some cute moments, but I feel like the overall tension and like yearning for each other could have been built out a little bit stronger or more intensely. Representation in this book was very, very good. I felt like really seen in some of these characters, so I really appreciate that, and I'm excited to have a book with this kind of representation in the young adult department, especially because I feel like I didn't see any of this when I was growing up. So the more diversity I see in reading, especially, well, in adult books, of course, because like that's what I'm reading, but like in young adult books, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad like the next generation after me has access to these books and like to feel reflected and seen in them. I think it's so great. Next up, we have Battle of the Bookstore by Allie Brady. I listened to this on audiobook and I gave it a 3 stars. It was cute. It was interesting at first, but I slowly got bored of it because I felt like the characters were getting annoying. It's about 2 characters, a female main character and a male main character, and they have 2 bookstores next to each other, and they're managers at these bookstores, and basically the person who's higher up was like, we're gonna combine. It's low-key giving the hating game, and the male main character is a romance store manager, so he like loves romance and smut and hosting these book clubs with like the community and just having these fun events at his bookstore, and she is like a literary fiction, historical fiction kind of girl, and that's like her bookstore. And so they're really just trying to like meet each other where they're at, because they realize like instead of being a competition, like how can we work together so that we both end up with this job. And it was interesting at first, but I lost interest after a bit in like the middle, and then by 70% I was like totally over with it, and I kind of wanted to DNF it, but I was like, I kind of want to see how it ends out, like who ends up actually keeping the job. It was giving the hating game, and the ending was like really dramatic for some reason, and I was like, I feel like this dramaticness didn't happen throughout the whole book, so it kind of came out of nowhere for me. But moving on to the month of August, the final month that I read this year, I started off the month with Writing Mr. Wrong, which I'm so sure I have a copy of, but I feel like I must have donated it or gave it away or something because I no longer have it. I listened to an audiobook and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. It was a very interesting start, but I lost interest in it because the female main character is an author and her internal monologue was overwhelming me in the story. Like it just felt really redundant because she had a crush on this hockey player and she basically wrote a book inspired by him, and he ends up reading it and he's like, hey, is this play about us? And I feel like she was just so in her head, and then they had to do this like fake dating role where he was like taking her on dates, and like it was a lot of internal monologue for both characters, so I was just kind of over it. Then next up, the last 2 books that I read for August ended up being 2 books that I have physically. The second book I read in August was People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young. I actually have 2 copies of this. I don't know if this one is yes, this is the one that I got signed at at my author meet and greet, which is really which is really great, and I'm so excited to have this. This was my pick for my friends and I book club. It was a really emotional and fun read, but it was also really spicy, and my friend is not like a heavy romance reader, so like introducing this to her, I was like, I think there's gonna be some spice scenes, so like let me know if you want a DNF. All the Hannah Bonham Young books that I read have been like really emotional, sad, and this book is sad, yes, like there's a really emotional aspect, but it wasn't as high as like Out on a Limb / Out of the Woods. A good mix of like emotional and spicy. And I just love Milo. The idea of him is so great. I wish he was real. Moving on to the very last book I read. This is Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this a 5 stars. I read this physically as well, and I am just so obsessed with this. This is a pretty big age gap, but somehow for me it just worked. Maybe because Maya is like 24 or 23. Like she is post-grad, or 22. She's in like her early 20s. So it's not the same as like being freshly out of high school, where I'm like, okay, she's like an adult who has like a college education, and she's very smart. Like throughout this book, you can read all about like her academic success. She's great. I love her. I love everything about her. I think she's so like relatable, where because I'm in my mid-20s, I'm not like, oh girl, that's relatable right now. But I remember experiencing everything that she was experiencing about like what to do with my future. I'm so confused. I'm so lost. I just don't have a good grip on like what's happening in the future. I was like, girl, I felt that in my early 20s. You feel a little bit more control in your mid-20s, and then hopefully as I get older, I feel more stable by the year, by the second, I don't know. But I think they just work out so well. I love everything about this book. I love the tension, the drama. Something had happened like 3 years ago, so the timeline keeps on jumping back, and I usually hate dual timeline. But for this book, I was obsessed with it because I kept on wanting to know every single thing about them. Like when we were back in the 3 years ago, I was like, I want to know everything that happened. And then would skip to present time, and I was like, ugh. And then I would read the present, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know everything that's happening right now. So I was just like overall really obsessed with this book, and I think everyone was as well because it had its moment. 5 stars. Yay! We talked about all the books that I read this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am getting a little bit hangry. So sorry if the ending feels rushed, but I'm trying to eat right now. I read a lot this year, but I also haven't read in a long time, like in a few months. So it's been a lot of ups and downs. Very happy with all the books that I read. I read 33 books this year, including 3 DNFs, so like 30 books completed. And I'm really, really excited about every single one. And I have a feeling I'm gonna read a lot more good books next year. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy. Comment down below if any books that I talked about is being added onto your TBR, or comment down below your favorite book of this year, because I really want to know so I can build my TBR for next year. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!